I'm Mark.
And I'm Josh.
And this is Alter Ego Comics TV, episode number 171. That's a lot of episodes.
It is.
We are here to talk to you about the best comics this week, the things that we enjoyed the most, the things that we highly recommend that you pick up at your local comic shop, and hopefully that's us if you're in the Lima, Ohio area. My pick of the week this week is Ms. Marvel number 6 by G. Willow Wilson. Guest art, or maybe this is the artist for the next arc, Jacob Wyatt, who does a fine job. I was a little concerned because I really like the other guy, Adrian Alfano. We're never good at names, especially names that aren't easy to pronounce. But Ms. Marvel, as I've mentioned so many times that you're probably sick of me saying it, is one of the best books that Marvel Comics is publishing right now. For a variety of reasons. But in order for this industry, this art form that we all love to continue, we need to get new characters on the printed page. We need to get new bodies into the store, new blood into the comic book industry. And
not like Kiss did with their comics.
Yes, no Kiss blood in the comics. But Kamala Khan is a brand new character, is appealing to people of all walks of life, and this is just a fun book. In this issue, we get to see what happens to every character in the Marvel Universe, the inevitable team up with Wolverine, which is just all kinds of fun. I don't know what else to say. I do know what else to say. We get to the storyline continues from the first 5 issues. We got the peacock head guy, whose name I can't remember, who turns out he says his name's Thomas Edison. He's the clone of Thomas Edison. There's so much crazy stuff happening in this book. You got alligators with like biomechanical enhancements on, or cybernetic enhancements. You got Wolverine being kind of a teacher, trainer guy. And you have a young girl who's learning how to deal with her powers. She's questioning, am I a mutant? Is this because I was exposed to the Terrigen mists? Or was she bitten by a radioactive rubber band? I don't know. Ms. Marvel, I don't know how many ways to say it. You really should check it out. If you haven't checked it out for one reason or another, do yourself a favor. And you could pick up this issue and jump right into it, but I would recommend starting with the first issue somewhere on its umpteenth printing. And get ready for a fun comic. Good stuff.
Yeah, this is great. It's easy to jump in, and I loved her interaction with Wolverine is priceless. I thought it was great.
It actually made me sad. Wolverine is one of my favorite characters, and this was long before he became the Wolverine that everyone detests.
You liked Wolverine before it was cool.
I liked Wolverine before it was cool, and I got the ink to prove it. But Wolverine's everywhere now, and now we have the death of Wolverine, which presumably will be the death of Wolverine, at least temporarily, or for a little while, much like it was for Batman and Captain America. But his interaction with Ms. Marvel in this issue kind of made me sad that Wolverine's not going to be around in a couple of months. So,
Over from Dynamite, we've got The Dead Leurs, written by Joshua Hale Fialkov, who you may remember from such hits as The Bunker and I, Vampire, with art by Matt Triano, and I don't know who he is.
So
he drew some pictures.
Is that one name? Matt Triano.
Matt Triano. Matt Triano.
He's a luchador.
And this is basically when demons attack the Vatican, when no one else can help, you call the A-Team.
Who are you going to call?
We get basically something horrible has gone in the Vatican, stuff is burning and terrible, and so a representative of the church is assembling a group of people to go in and deal with this demonic force. And that's the pitch. You've got a sort, he's not defrocked, but he's a priest he's clearly not really...
questionable...
Yeah.
Moral.
I don't know if it's morals, but he doesn't share what you would call the traditional view.
He's kind of like
the
the Jesuits that I had in high school and college. They're like the cool priests. The Jesuit, and that's why we have a cool pope now, because he's a Jesuit. Carry on.
We got the cool pope now. And no, basically that's what the book is. There's something we don't even see what really is attacking. They do a great job of making this main character, the priest, sort of cool. I mean, he really is. Like, he uses, like, teaching moments. He has kind of like an Obi-Wan Kenobi vibe. Because you see him kind of talking to this. He's giving basically an interview to someone who's a skeptic and who's looking to, to believe or to have his faith challenged. And he tells these stories, and it's very It's very cool.
He's kind of like the older brother talking to the younger brother and dispelling these myths that exist within, supposed myths that exist within the Catholic Church or the world. And it would be like, hey, you're talking to your older brother about whatever. I could say stuff, but I won't. I actually don't have one. Anyway.
But yeah, the first part is getting to know this very cool character, and then by the end of the issue, he gets thrown together with this team of people from all different walks of life and religions to go off and fight these demonic forces. Well, I assume they're demonic. We don't actually even know that.
Yeah, well, we kind of do.
It's implied, yeah. It's called The Dead Leurs. But great book, very excited. Dynamite is, again, proving that when they get good creators, they get good books.
Yeah, yeah. And now I can only hear the A-Team theme running through my head, and I picture this cardinal running around, and I hear dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, and they're gathering the
Cardinal's got a cigar.
Yes, yes. The Cardinal is Hannibal. Yeah. And the priest could be Face. Great out of the gate by Joshua Hale Falkov. Just a really solid writer. One of the... I don't want to say up-and-comers because he's been writing comics for quite a while. But he does a really nice job writing comics. Nice job, Josh.
Good work, Josh.
This was a surprise for me to some degree, but I picked it up because it's a number one, and I feel like it's my job to read every number one so that I can offer my 2 cents. Or let me go back. Not even offer my 2 cents, but recommend the good stuff. And Robin Rises Omega is the good stuff. This is a one-shot that kicks off the Robin Rises storyline, which will be in Batman and Robin, and maybe someplace else, I don't know. But this is written by Peter Tomasi, artwork by Andy Kubert, printed on toilet paper. Apparently, any book that Andy Kubert does has to be printed on this substandard paper. I'm not sure what it is. He did the Damian, Son of Batman book last year, which looked great and was very entertaining, but was, again, printed on substandard paper. So I don't know what the deal is.
I don't know. It's oversized. Maybe they had to, I don't know. It's definitely thicker than a normal issue.
But this picks up right, if you've been reading Batman and Fill in the Guest Star by Peter Tomasi for the last several months, this is the continuation of that storyline. Batman is still dealing and grieving with the loss of his son Damian. And the beginning of this book really does a nice job, I thought, of summarizing the relationship. First, who Damian is, and summarizing the relationship between Bruce and Damian. I thought it was the first... I really enjoyed the book as a whole, but I really enjoyed the first 5 or 6 pages where they talk about...
Yes, it's actually kind of amazing because this is the least one-shot ever. I mean, it's literally the culmination of years of storyline, and it picks up like directly from the last panel of the last issue of Robin.
Well, you know why?
Or Batman.
I mean, they want to put a number one on it so that you buy it and that you jump into the beginning of this series.
Right, and it is easy to pick up and follow, and they give you everything you need to know. And it's just...
it's got everything you want in here. It's got the Justice League, it's got Batman, it's got Ra's al Ghul.
And that is the current Justice League, so it's including Captain Cold and Lex Luthor.
Yeah. It's got Parademons, it's got...
Frankenstein.
Gilbert Gottfried, or what's his face? Glorious Gottfried. All kinds of... Frankenstein. And what's with Frankenstein getting his arm ripped off and everything?
I don't know, it happens a lot, though.
It happens a lot. This was...
You should issue that one Velcroed or something.
This was a jam-packed, or jam-filled, action-packed.
Was it raspberry jam that filled it?
It was sweet goodness. But who knows what's going to happen. If you've been reading DC Comics in the last week or two, the house ads have shown Robin, it's a skeleton with his Robin cloak on, with his costume, and kind of interesting. If you haven't read Batman in a while, this is a Batman like we really haven't seen before. Right. I mean, he is totally... got tunnel vision as far as bringing his son back to life. And
well, it's not even at this point. He's not even about... I mean, he does want to bring him back, but the whole plot kicks off because Ra's is trying to bring him back with the Lazarus Pits and has stolen the corpse. His
the last page, he says he's bringing back Robin alive.
Well, that's because he's figured out something. He's Batman. He's got glowy eyes now, apparently.
Apparently, he's got Darkseid's Omega beams or whatever.
But great read.
If you have any interest in the Batman family and the character of Damian, and for some reason you weren't reading Batman and Robin, you need to pick up Robin Rises Omega. Good stuff this week.
Yeah, Pete Tomasi, who wrote this, is one of the great working class comic book writers.
Absolutely.
He doesn't have the big... He's like Billy Joel. He's never been cool. He's never been like the hot thing, but he just solidly does great work over and over again.
Definitely one of the unsung heroes at DC Comics right now. Yeah. One of the few remaining writers at DC Comics.
Bob Harris. Anyway, Infinite Crisis, Fight for the Multiverse #1. This is a new comic series tied into the Infinite Crisis video game, which is a MOBA, multiplayer online battle arena, like League of Legends or, that sort of stuff. Dota. Not like that. But this is the book adapting the story, or kind of setting up the universe for the book. It's written by Dan Abnett, who you may remember from the most modern, and well, not the most recent, but the grand modern incarnation of Guardians of the Galaxy, with Andy Lanning.
I don't know if he's Simon or Garfunkel of that.
I don't know either. I know they're not working together anymore, and there was a falling out. Well, I don't know if you saw in that Guardians interview, Feige and who's the director?
Yeah.
Crap. Anyway, the director of Guardians,
James
Gunn, there you go, basically called out and said, their movie is based on the Abnett and Lanning. Matter of fact, I think that's exactly how they said it.
The currently out of print and unavailable Abnett and Lanning.
No, that's not true, because next Wednesday, the first complete Guardians of the Galaxy, the first volume of the complete Guardians of the Galaxy by Abnett and Lanning will be coming out. So you will be once again able to enjoy the awesomeness. But this is a new book from Abnett, and
hey, Abnett.
Anyone who's familiar with DC Comics knows that Infinite Crisis is a pretty loaded title. And it does pretty much what you would expect. You've got all of the Earths converging. We've got another Monitor, obviously seeing this stuff and trying to put together a team of people to get together. But why this is awesome and why you should read it is that they basically gave the gaming company free reign to pick through DC Comics and make the coolest stuff they want. So you've got the DC Atomic Universe, which is basically Fallout. You've got Wonder Woman fighting with a parking meter with concrete still stuck on the end. You've got people who have survived a post-apocalyptic universe, scavenging, but it's also interpretations of the classic heroes. You've got the Arcane Universe, which gives us the coolest freaking looking Green Lantern we've had in a long time, with his mace and his cloak, and he looks all like a go to Jerusalem and fight people. Crusader. Okay, cleric is fair too, though.
Crusader.
You went with the D&D
Crusader
thing?
works better. Yes, I wasn't thinking the Middle Eastern cleric. I was thinking the D&D cleric.
Okay. But no, it's very cool that they can jump around. We do get to see some books some universes that we've seen before in comic form. They're in the Gaslight universe, made famous in Batman Gotham by Gaslight and its sequel. And they've teased the Red Rain universe, where Batman is a vampire, and some tie-in stuff. So just very cool. If you like Elseworldsy stories, this is where you're going to get the most of them for your buck until Multiversity comes out. Also, a great bang for your buck is this issue. The first printing contains a code for a free character and download and a costume in the Infinite Crisis game, and I believe it's Doomsday.
It is Doomsday.
So if you're going to play the game, it makes sense to check out the universe and get a free character.
Yeah, spend the $4 on the comic just so you can get the skin. But I think you'll actually like the character. Sorry, not the skin.
Well, no, there is a costume as well, which would technically be a skin. But
I really enjoyed it as well. I mean, if you're familiar with DC and there are multiple universes, and Elseworlds is the big keyword here, if you're an Elseworlds fan, this is a must-buy.
Yeah, and I think it's going to bother me because they're dealing with so many universes, we're not going to get over much time in any one. Like, I want to know what's up with that Two-Face that's in the issue and on the cover.
It's a messed up.
Like, that is. I don't know how we get there, but I want to find out.
Well, they even, not to continue gushing over this book, but with any of these books, I guess you have to come to grips that they're outside of continuity to some degree, like Injustice. But as I was reading this, I was having a hard time keeping that in mind, because they're like present-day Gotham, and it's our present-day Batman, and they reference Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they're showing panels, Superman holding the body of Supergirl, and Harbingers in it, and Harbingers in the current story. Not the Harbinger from Crisis, but...
That's got to be the first time we've seen Harbinger in years, isn't it?
She was around at another point. So was this Monitor. The guy...
that Monitor was around... At the end of Brightest Day.
52?
I don't think I've seen him in the New 52, but I could be mistaken.
Anyway, this was a lot of fun, and DC fans will love it. Yeah. Finally, for me, is Life with Archie, number 36. And I'm talking about this for a few reasons. First of all, it's a really solid story. I'm not the biggest Archie fan in the world, but I'm 40 years old. I'm very familiar with the character of Archie. I watched the Archie cartoons when I was a youngin'. I'm familiar with the music, the whole 9 yards. I've seen enough old Archie comics that I know kind of sort of what the Archie universe is all about. So Life with Archie is a comic series that is that has explored the what if scenario of what if Archie married. It's Archie the married life. What if Archie married Betty in one timeline? What if Archie married Veronica in another timeline? And you find out by reading the introductory material to the story that those two the stories have kind of converged, and now there is one timeline, and we don't know whether Archie is married to Betty or Veronica in this one.
It's Crisis on Infinite Archies.
Yes.
It's like they looked at comic book continuity and went, what do comic fans like? Crazy universes? We'll take it.
And I will tell you, the only reason I read this, and I will spoil this because it's been spoiled all over the world for the last few days.
The cover is pretty. I mean.
This is the death of Archie Andrews. And he dies a heroic death, taking a bullet for one of his friends. But the whole issue is kind of a history of Archie, which was very enjoyable to read. I mean, Archie, there's so much darkness in the comics that we read.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, the great thing about comics is that there are so many different genres. There's something for every taste. And it turns out, most of the superhero stuff that we read is pretty heavy stuff. I mean, it's not lighthearted and fun. There's some of it, like Ms. Marvel, which is a very fun book, which has elements of action and danger and surprise. But Archie is a very sugar-coated world. So something like this to happen in the Archie universe is a big deal.
And they even address that in the book. One of the reasons Archie has been so big for years is because the publishers made the choice to not let people draw the way they want to draw. Archie looks the same today as he did in the 50s. It's a creative or an editorial directive. You draw him the way Archie's supposed to look. And they talk about, how the town hasn't changed in 50 years. There aren't other towns that don't change like this, and it's interesting that they're aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the gist of this, the story itself is incredibly solid, whether you're a longtime Archie fan or whether you're picking it up for the first time just to follow the sensationalism of the media. And the end is a little emotional. You have this iconic character who's lying there bleeding to death. The downside to this whole situation is this is another one of those sensationalized stories where many people are coming in off the street and calling and wanting this thing, and as a retailer, we had to shake the magic 8-ball and try and figure out how many copies of this do we order, because we had one person pre-order a copy of this. And our track record with Archie is not so stellar, so we didn't have a whole lot available, and by the time this goes up, we will probably be sold out. Either getting more in the following week or waiting for the inevitable second printing.
We're getting at least a couple in the next week.
Yeah,
it's not going to be a large volume, probably.
But my point of this to you, our loyal viewers, is regardless of where you shop, whether it's with us or another local comic book store, even if you buy your stuff online, comics these days, it's so important for you to pre-order your books. And I know that's asking a lot. I know that's asking you to commit to something without having it in your hands, without being able to flip through it. But I know that there's a lot of stuff where you can comfortably do that and feel relatively certain that you're going to like what the finished product is. That data is so important to us as retailers, and also so important to the publishers when they're setting print runs, because no one wants to have too much product left over, and no one wants to sell out of a product on day one. So the moral of the story is, if there's something that you know that you want, pre-order it early. Remember that retailers order about 2 months in advance. So pick up the previews catalog, which if you're one of our customers, we gave you a free copy of. Our pull list customers during the month of July. During the month of July, yes. And it's full of great stuff that you can order. It's also the catalog that we order out of. But it helps us pick a number. It helps us stock the product that you want. It helps make sure that someone else doesn't go home with your copy of Comic X, of Life with Archie 36, or Robin Rises Omega. Make sure that you get the stuff that you want, and we want to make you happy. So that's the soapbox announcement for the day. Pre-order, set up a pull list with your local comic book shop. Most shops do it for no charge and will hold the books for you for a certain amount of time, so you don't have to worry about missing out on stuff. Because I know Afterlife with Archie, for the most part, my guess was under-ordered by the comic book industry.
Afterlife or Life with Archie?
I'm sorry, Life with Archie. Because it's Archie, and we'll get to that during our top 5 of why it was probably under-ordered. So, thumbs up for Life with Archie 36, thumbs up for pre-ordering and setting up pull lists.
All right, next up, we've got Brian Lee O'Malley's Seconds, the graphic novel. You remember Brian Lee O'Malley as the creator, writer, artist of Scott Pilgrim. And
or you may not.
If you're not familiar with that, I will take a second here to gush about Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim is like jazz music. It doesn't have a lot of substance, but you want to see where it goes. It's constantly changing and reacting and evolving, and it's unexpected. The great part about Scott Pilgrim was the way that it told a comic book story through the lens of our experience of video games and comic books. And it's brilliant. It's great. And that's why we got the movie. The movie wasn't quite as good because the movie, due to time factors, cut out a lot of the actual character building. The Scott Pilgrim in the comic is incredibly relatable. There's a lot of quiet moments where, if you've ever been a 20-something out of college who doesn't have their life together, you really connect with it. And we didn't see much of that in the movie. But the comic is great. After that, O'Malley's other well-known work is Lost at Sea, which is much more introspective, almost like autobiographical style stuff, although it's not autobiographical because the protagonist is a girl and O'Malley is a boy, I think. Wait, they don't name girls Brian in Canada, do they?
They might.
No, he could be a girl.
It's with a Y.
But Seconds is the story of a young woman who's 29, and she's a chef at a restaurant, and she's trying to open her own restaurant and spin off. And it's very well put together, very relatable, and a little ways in, things get kind of strange. She starts having these visions and seeing this house spirit. Like, if you're familiar with a lot of traditional folk tales and mythologies, homes have their own spirit that you have to appease, give them food or whatever.
Yes,
leave milk out for the Nixies.
They're called children in my house.
Like that. And the house spirit gives her these magic mushrooms. Yeah. And those allow her to change things. She's basically either altering reality or traveling through time, depending on how you want to look at it. And that's what the bulk of the story is. It's like a butterfly effect, a story about how the choices you make altering things and the ultimate consequences of doing that more than once and how it builds up. And it's really well put together, and it's really, really good. I enjoyed the heck out of it. It's over 200 pages. Almost 300 pages.
Let me clarify that Josh read probably about 25 single comic books last night, and Seconds.
Yeah, I started Seconds to just see how it was, and then I couldn't put it down. So yes, I apparently traded sleep for comics last night, and Seconds was worth every penny, every moment of it.
Yes.
All right, Seconds, Brandley O'Malley, super great, awesome.
I want to read it now, and I probably wasn't going to read it before because I've never read Scott Pilgrim. I'm sorry to say, I have seen the movie, but I want to read this now.
There you go.
Okay, so we know that. Many of you were disappointed that we abandoned the top 5 list last week, so we're back to a top 5 list. And it's an interesting one. It's one that we've kind of spitballed around this morning. These are the top 5 comic book characters that are very relevant and what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say like purveyant. Is that a word? Pervasive.
Pervasive.
They're pervasive in our society,
pervasive, yeah.
But they can't sell comic books, really. In the 21st century.
The comic characters that are important even if you don't think they are.
There you go. The top 5 comic book characters that are important even if you don't think they are. First up is Tintin, the French character, the French boy.
Is it Belgian?
No, Belgian, sorry.
Yeah.
He's Belgian. And has a dog. And honestly, the only thing I know about Tintin is I watched the movie that was a collaboration between Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson, which is very entertaining, by the way. You should check it out. And supposedly there will be 2 more films, but I think a lot of time has passed, and I don't know if we're ever going to see. But it's a really solid movie. I mean, it's very much a Raiders of the Lost Ark style pacing, and I think John Williams may have done the music. In fact, I know he did. So it has that feel of Raiders of the Lost Ark. But Tintin was huge in Belgium and possibly America in so Spielberg and Peter Jackson both have an affinity for this character, so it must have been the 1950s that he was really popular. But
and going for years. I mean, they still publish Tintin.
They do, and they have Tintin, tchotchkes and action figures and statues and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
We can't sell any of it to save our lives.
No.
There's no Tintin book in the store because our local customers don't care about Tintin, which is what the most of the world feels about Tintin. But you ask creative folks, you ask people like Spielberg and Jackson and comic book people.
Well, even who's the guy on the Travel Channel? Anthony Bourdain.
Oh, yeah.
And his
He did a comic, yeah.
Yeah, no, well, he did a comic, but like in his, he's talking about growing up, his family going and visiting France. He talked mostly about food because he's a chef, but he also talks about remembering Tintin comics, and he like gushes about these experiences that are 30 years ago, or more.
For a fairly large segment of the U.S. population, Tintin was important.
Yeah,
Tintin's not so important anymore.
not so much,
but
it was important enough to get a Steven Spielberg movie.
Yeah, because it was a passion project,
right.
Not because the world was screaming for Tintin movies. Although you see the first one, I want a second movie, and I don't know if I'm going to get it. What's next here?
What's next here? Do you want to do?
You take any of them. I can speak on all of them.
All right. Well, let's talk about Casper the Friendly Ghost. Casper and the person we're talking about next are a little bit related because they're both Harvey Comics, and it's sort of for years nobody's currently publishing the Harvey line, right?
I don't think so.
No, it was.
I take that back. I think somebody might have the Harvey license.
Really?
I don't know who it is though, and they're not doing single issues. They're doing
graphic novels,
digest or collected editions of new material.
Right. But Casper is kind of a big deal. You've got the comics, which were very kid oriented, starting in the 40s.
Sounds about right,
roughly. But since then, we've gotten motion pictures. We've got a series of direct-to-video movies. And actually, I was kind of amazed. I was watching my nephew last weekend, and we flip on Netflix because that's what you do now when you watch kids. And he's like, oh, let's watch Casper. I'm like, how does a 6-year-old know about Casper the Friendly Ghost? He does. They care.
There's a relatively new Casper TV series. I don't know if it was direct to whatever. It wasn't anything I watched, but my 5-year-old has found it on Netflix. It's like Casper's Scare School or something like that.
Okay.
Computer-generated graphics, that sort of thing.
It's like Hogwarts, but for ghosts?
I didn't watch it. I just set them up in front of the iPad and walk away.
Parenting.
But for me, again, I'm a little older than you are, but I watched the Casper cartoon all the time when I was a kid. It was one of those things, this is pre-cable. Casper was on after school on one of the 5 channels that we had on TV, and it was awesome. I loved it. Even growing up to 8, 10 years old, I was still watching Casper. I'm watching it right after we're done with this. But Casper everyone knows who Casper is. You can make pop culture references to Casper. You hear them frequently in many things. But you see any Casper comics on the stands? Nope. And the fact that we both have young relatives who are familiar with the character of Casper, but not the way that we are.
Right.
So there is a generation of kids that like Casper and know who Casper is, but they're not the ones buying comics. They're not the ones reading comics. And it wouldn't surprise me to see Casper show up again, on the stands.
Right.
And again, some publisher may have the rights. In the back of my mind, I think they do. But
a lot of these characters, they're like Turok. There will always be.
Yeah, there'll always be
who's willing to take a shot
gold
on
key
Casper.
characters. Yeah. All right, so that leads into Richie Rich, which was another one where I watched the Richie Rich cartoon all the time.
And that one I actually do remember a little better.
Well, yeah, and that was probably early to mid 1980s. Okay. It was on NBC or CBS. It was a Saturday morning cartoon, whereas Casper was, I don't know when they were originally aired, but they were showing in syndication. People know who Richie Rich is. Do you know who played Richie Rich in the movies, the live-action movies?
Macaulay Culkin.
He
was a big deal at that point.
The Home Alone kid. Yeah, this was like almost at puberty, maybe a little before puberty, Macaulay Culkin. Playing Richie Rich. I think John Larroquette was in one of those movies.
He was. And Mike McShane was the scientist guy.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, he was Friar Tuck in Prince of Thieves.
Yep, still don't know who that is.
He was the hypnotist in Office Space.
Josh is the president of the Mike McShane fan club. If you're interested in joining, email josh@alteregocomics.com. Costs $5, but you do get a swatch of Friar Tuck's robe from Robin Hood.
It's actually just a Gamorrean action figure from Star Wars.
Richie Rich. You all know who Richie Rich is, but Richie and the influence of that character in pop culture, but no Richie Rich comics. We see them walk through the door week in and week out because people have these in their garages and their attics, stacks of Richie Rich and Richie Rich and Casper comics and Hot Stuff and those guys.
Wendy the Witch.
Wendy the Witch
was the other Harvey one.
Yeah.
They do Baby Huey? Or is it somebody else?
Oh, I think they did.
Yeah. And then just the other night, this was in reruns. It's obviously no new stuff in summer. They made a Richie Rich joke on Big Bang Theory. No, it's out there. People
It's
know.
there. All right, wrap us up. Take us home.
We got one more after this.
No, we don't. Yeah, we do.
Counting's fun.
There's so many words on this page.
All right. Next up is the one that I watched after school, Scrooge McDuck. And this is an interesting one because Donald Duck is a movie character. Scrooge was introduced in the comics, written by Carl Banks.
Mm-hmm.
And he just did them for years, the Uncle Scrooge comic, the Donald Duck comics, and they were incredibly well written, really well put together, and they became the basis for what was later, what I'm more familiar with, the DuckTales cartoon that was on in the 80s and early 90s. And, yeah, I mean, Donald Duck, they just re-released the original NES DuckTales video game.
For what?
For all consoles. You can download it on Xbox. I got it on Xbox, you can get it on PS3. You might be able to get it on tablets. But it's crazy, the idea that these characters that, originally the stuff started being written in the 60s is when Banks was doing it originally. And then, it was, when I was a kid in the 80s, it was a big deal because of the reinvention in cartoons, and it's still out there. Does Diamond still do the collections of Uncle Scrooge every Christmas?
No, they don't.
The Gemstone lose them?
I don't think they have a license anymore.
Well, they did. For years they did. And it's Disney, but it's not. Like, it's its own self-contained universe.
It's like
it has a different sensibility than the traditional kind of Disney. Because honestly, I couldn't tell you what Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse are about. They don't really have personalities. They've been so kind of homogenized to the point where they don't want anything or need anything. They're just happy and someone fell down, and it's dumb. But there are characters in DuckTales that matter.
What you said is exactly true. The characters of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, for the most part, appeal to a much younger audience than the character of Scrooge McDuck, because kids don't understand greed. Kids don't understand avarice, and they kind of get it as you're getting older. But for them, Mickey Mouse is just a cool-looking, fun character, and same thing with Donald Duck is just goofy, who talks funny. You can't understand what he's saying.
He gets angry.
You won't like him when he's angry. Well, you will like him when he's angry. But Scrooge McDuck was that kind of teenage. It appealed to that maybe 8 and up demographic. But, how often do you hear someone say, I want to swim through money like Scrooge McDuck. I want to dive into the gold coins like Scrooge McDuck. Speaking of Netflix again, there was a Disney Christmas compilation, and one of them was...
the old school one where he's Scrooge?
No, it's not that one. It was one where Huey, Dewey, and Louie, Scrooge's nephews? Scrooge's
they're
great nephews?
They're Donald's nephews and Scrooge's nephews, and it was never clear on me how.
I think they're Scrooge's great nephews. But they're in a Groundhog Day type of situation on Christmas morning.
Excellent.
And they're having Christmas dinner, and Scrooge McDuck is there. It's Daisy and Donald and Scrooge McDuck and the 3 nephews and some other people. But he's still around. He shows up in things all the time. But go into a comic book store and try and buy a current Scrooge McDuck comic. No such luck.
Also, his series was the progenitor for Darkwing Duck, which was the greatest after-school cartoon ever.
I disagree.
Oh, come on. How many other cartoons?
Stop.
I'm just saying shared universe. Duckburg and... Oh, crap. The city that... Mallard City is what Darkwing Duck was set in? They shared characters back and forth. It was like a comic book, because you could see characters on one and they would go to the other, and it was...
Was Launchpad in it?
Yeah, Launchpad was from Scrooge McDuck, and then he went to Darkwing and became the sidekick.
Only comic book fans would be this geeky about a cartoon.
Crossover, yes.
Yes. All right, finally, I mentioned it earlier, Archie Comics. The character of Archie is not what he used to be. First off, he's dead. But, everyone, if I asked 100 people on the street over the age of 40, probably, maybe 45, what comic books did you read growing up, or have you ever read an Archie comic? They would say yes. I remember going to the barbershop when I was a kid, and they had comics for, sitting there, the magazines for people today, and a bunch of them were Archie comics. Again, I mentioned the Archie cartoon series. There was the top 10 hit by the Archies, at least one. It spawned Josie and the Pussycats. It's Sabrina the Teenage Witch. A lot of stuff that's within the pop culture lexicon. But Archie is not really not popular today. Although, after reading Life with Archie 36, apparently there's a new animated series that's supposed to show up sometime next year.
Wow.
Where, I don't know. Probably on Amazon or Hulu Plus. But the publishers are doing some great stuff that that diehard comic fans are aware of. Things like Afterlife with Archie, which is selling extremely well.
Well, it's selling extremely well, but I mean, it's only selling extremely well by Archie standards.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it probably sells like a third tier Marvel comic or something. I mean, it's not blowing up the charts.
No, yeah, yes.
I think there was a period,
it's very good,
maybe as recently as 5 years ago, where Archie was really struggling as far as an icon, as an imprint. But the current publisher and the people in charge over there have taken some steps to make him somewhat relevant again by introducing the character of Kevin Keller as the first gay character in Archie Comics. Running this storyline of
crossing over with Glee.
Yeah, crossing over with Glee and putting Lima on the map, baby. The death of Archie, the afterlife with Archie, everything with Archie. Everything's Archie.
And Archie's always been, I mean, the classic example would be the Archie meets Punisher.
Oh, yeah.
Which was what, 80s or 90s? Maybe early 90s.
That was probably late 80s, 89 maybe. But it's another one where everyone is familiar with the character. Everyone knows Archie, but how many people are actively consuming Archie product at this point?
No, it's insane. The penetration, like, I didn't even think about it. I mean, like, Jughead, was that a phrase before the character? I don't know. How many times?
Mr. Witherby?
Well, yeah, whenever you have the dichotomy, anytime you're just like, oh, are you a Beatles fan or a Stones fan? Betty or Veronica. Yeah. It's a different, it's a whole thing. It's ingrained on a level I guess I didn't even think about until we started talking about it.
Yeah, it's just interesting because you can talk about, I don't want to say mainstream, let's just talk about superheroes. Because, Batman has pretty much always been popular. There's a period, prior to Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil coming on board in the 70s, where maybe right after the TV show, where the popularity kind of waned a little bit. But a lot of these characters that were introduced around the same time as these that we talked about today have never really floundered. The superhero characters have been extremely popular, whereas kind of the humor characters, and I think that's what it is that a lot of these humor, Tintin doesn't apply because it was kind of its own thing, but the humor comics are not popular, according to me.
No, you're absolutely. I mean, we have sales data to back that up pretty thoroughly. But I think part of that might be an evolutionary thing. In the '80s, well, even in the '70s, when Neil Adams was coming on, Batman was pretty dark and serious and gritty, and that was never going to work for those characters. They never, in a lot of ways, they were never accepted as acceptable reading material for adults the same way Batman and the other stuff became over time.
Well, I guess, which is, we kind of brought up this list just to talk about it ourselves because we thought it was interesting, but to share with you. And I think the takeaway is that, I firmly believe, with the exception of Tintin, which I have no experience with other than the movie. I've never read any Tintin comics. I think all of them are still viable to some degree. Like if a publisher really got behind trying to get these comics into kids' hands today, and some of their parents too. I mean, things that you could read. I could read a Casper comic with my son, or a Richie Rich comic. Any of these things.
Boom tried that with Scrooge, and then Disney screwed him.
Yes, yes. So who knows? I think that Disney has tried to publish some stuff through Marvel. Disney still has their own publishing company for handling a lot of their characters. The Harvey characters, who knows? But I think that they're all still attractive as far as properties. It's just getting them into the right people's hands. And because the average age of a comic reader is probably somewhere around 25 right now, it's just not working. So kids need to read comics. Get kids into comic stores. Give kids comics for Halloween, birthdays. I have never met a kid that doesn't like comics. Really. There have been lots of kids have come through the store. They've never been in a comic store before. They've never read a comic before. They leave with something and they come back for more. So, people say kids don't like comics. I disagree vehemently. I think that kids just aren't exposed to comics anymore, and it's our responsibility as comic fans ourselves to see to pass on that legacy, to share that with them. And I think that's a great way to end the episode today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your comments. Give kids some comics. Set up a poll list. Pre-order some comics. Don't do drugs. Drink your milk. Eat your vegetables. Stay in school. And we'll see you next time.